Okay, welcome to Meet the Experts, our new series, which is really exciting. I'm Cassandra Hesseltine, the Film Commissioner for Humboldt and Del Counties, and I'm super excited to interview you, JP. Could you tell us who you are and what you do in the film industry?
Sure thing. My name is Jean-Paul, but most people call me JP because, it's easier and it's not French and we're Americans. So I am a prop master and a special effects rigger and a little bit of some other stuff too. My union affiliation on the East Coast, where I just moved from, it's Local 52, and that covers in our area. I think it's a little different here: grips, electrics, props, special effects, set dressing, all of that art department stuff. So what I mostly do recently is special effects rigging, mostly for TV food commercials and some soda and beer commercials. A lot of pours, a lot of flame effects, making food look hot and steamy or sizzly or things flying through the air, fun stuff like that. And then what I do in between that, and what I'm hoping to do here, if the world ever goes back to anything like normal, is work on the films that are going to be coming here like crazy, doing either some set dressing or propping or maybe some effects work. I just don't know. I'm looking forward to finding that out with you and everybody else.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again for doing this, interview. And I think what's really great about this is I think a lot of people know there's an art department, and they might think, oh, you literally put art on the wall, or maybe you pick a couch. But I don't know that people realize that there is a job where someone has to make food steam for a food commercial. I don't think they realize the detail of what needs to happen when we do, marketing and commercial ads like that, or, if food just needs to steam even in a movie or whatever. Those kind of details, I think people have overlooked and just kind of accept that it happens, naturally. And I think what's great about your particular job in this interview, it really shows how many different types of jobs there are in the industry and how fine the details are, and that somebody has to make that happen. And so in this case, you're the guy. I think so that's exciting. And I think the other exciting thing is we've already interviewed a special effects guy. But he was straight special effects. What I love about your role as prop master and doing rigging and special effects is the two worlds kind of, meet up, and I love that, that you're, that you do both those roles and that they could cross over. So that's really exciting too. So I think this is going to be amazing to hear about your food commercials and also Saturday Night Live. And then also, but let's start with your first project. How did you get into the industry? And tell us about that first project, because it's a pretty epic one.
Um, you know, uh, I don't know if I actually told you about my first project, but that's a good story too.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. First
and
one that I'm aware of.
the Apostle.
See, yes.
So, so yes, I was living in. I grew up in. I grew up poor on a farm, a small farm in South Central Louisiana, in what's basically Cajun country. And when I guess in the late 70s, it started to get a little bit popular because of the Cajun cuisine and all that. There were some commercials and things. And that's when it sort of became a little more of a film destination. And when Robert Duvall, I don't know when he fell in love with the area, but he wanted to do his film The Apostle there. And he hired a New York, or not he, but the production hired a New York art department, decorator and designer. And I had met the designer years and years before on the other story, which I'm going to tell you later, which is a great story, because she had been down there a few times before. And she called up my dad because she didn't have my number and asked if I wanted to be a set dresser on a feature film. And that was really exciting at the time because I was just kind of doing odd jobs. I was a little bit of a jack of all trades. I had done some auto mechanic work, some roofing, some carpentry, some crawfishing, some plumbing, a little bit of everything, but nothing quite as glamorous as a film. So I was really excited to do that. And I got there, and I had met some film people on the commercials and stuff beforehand, but really realized as I started set dressing and hanging out with these people that they're the kind of the wacky, amazing, out of the box thinking group that I was really attracted to. Like I know some great grips and electrics, and some great people, and all, you know, as we all know, anybody who has experience with film work or commercials or TV or anything, it's a pretty crazy, amazing group of people. A lot of really intelligent, funny, forward-thinking people. And I just really fell in love with them, and sort of specifically fell in love with the decorator in real life, who I'm now married to. She was part of the New York crew who had been brought down to Louisiana to do this film. And after the film, that was in '96. After the film was over in '97, I moved up to Manhattan, which was crazy, like a crazy place to live, because I had never really lived in a big city before, and that was pretty wild. Started doing PA work, and then started getting hired on commercials, did some non-union stuff, and got into the union pretty quick. Started doing commercials, some TV, some features, in a variety of positions, from special effects, because Lori, my wife, had some special effects connections from films that she had done. And so I started doing some rain effects and some snow effects. In between that, I was doing prop mastering. I got, very early in my career, I got hired as the prop master for the Olive Garden live action commercials, which were insane. It was crazy. I had never seen anything like this. They happened.
What was insane about them? Tell us.
Well, I don't know what experience many people have with a film studio, specifically for a soundstage, where you walk in the morning and it's a gigantic empty room, like the biggest empty room you've ever been in, like if they cleared out the Home Depot and it was just empty. So we would start with that. All the sets for Olive Garden, which was basically 4 walls of a restaurant, the tables, the chairs, the light fixtures, was stored in the basement. So for a day, we would bring everything up from the basement. The grips would tell us where the walls go. We'd roll out the carpet, put the walls up. The scenics would come in to paint. We'd hang the light fixtures. We'd put the tables and chairs, and basically build a restaurant in a day that looked like an Olive Garden. And then the next day we would pre-light. They'd set the lights and they'd run all the power for everything. And then usually in the same space, aside from the shooting the families, having fun at the restaurant and taking the beautiful bites and cheersing with the wine and all that, we would set up a small set. And sometimes it was grandpa's house or grandma making the pasta sauce on the stove that, you know, made them want to go to, you know, Olive Garden or whatever, because, you know, when you hear your family and all that. Or we'd do a little tomato garden outside somebody's house, you know, build the outside of a house with a little garden. Amazing, fun stuff, you know. And then shoot for 3 days and rip it all down and put it back in the basement.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But that production company who was filming the live action Olive Garden stuff, the other part of the company was also shooting the tabletop, which is what you were saying. A lot of people don't really realize. Often it's a completely different job, sometimes a completely different production company that shoots the close-up food, the sauce being ladled onto the pasta, or the, you know, shrimp grilling on the grill or whatever. They had an opening because one of the riggers, which is what that position is called, had retired, and they needed somebody, and they I guess they figured that I would be good at that because I'm detail oriented, and the director was a little bit of a crazy person. I think I can say that. And I kind of got along with him for whatever reason. So I started doing tabletop photography, which was, I had no idea at the time. And this was in the days before digital, so we were still shooting film. And when so much of the tabletop photography, if you look at it, the exciting stuff is high speed. And these days, you can shoot high speed on your iPhone. But back then, it was a gigantic camera called a photosonic camera, big 1,000-foot mag of film. And it was so loud when it got up to speed because it had to run the film through so fast. I don't even know what the top speed of those things was, 500 frames per second or 600, something like that. It made a huge noise, and the light had to be so bright for the tiny little shutter, everything. There was just so much light that everybody was burning. They would turn the lights on right when they started the camera because you couldn't have them on all the time because the food would melt, it would burn, the cheese, it was a mess. Sometimes it was so hot we'd have to wear tinfoil hats, crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh.
But that was the photosonic camera, and you would get a take or two per mag, and you wouldn't know until the next day when they transferred it and got the video back, because they would transfer it to video. You wouldn't know if you got the shot.
Oh wow!
There's no playback.
Yeah, you can play back right now. Yeah.
It was insane.
Oh man.
It's a little different now. In many ways, because you don't need as much light. It's a lot less expensive to shoot. And the digital effects people can take out rigs and things like that a lot easier than they could back then. So
that's amazing.
A lot easier. But it's still grueling, and it's very detail oriented, and it's a lot of fun. And it's probably something that nobody will ever have to know how to do here. But I'm glad that I know how to do it, because it's definitely job security. There's a job right now in New Jersey that if it's shooting today actually and tomorrow, that if it wasn't for this pandemic that we're having, I would have flown down to Jersey City to work on it. And it is a Pepsi commercial with a 7-Eleven pizza tie-in. So one of my specialties also is, when you see the pizza pull, the cheese, the person
Yes.
the slice of pizza and the cheese stretches and the steam and the bubbling. I'm good at that.
That's you? That's you?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. That's
and
amazing.
It's not just the rigger. It's also, obviously, maybe it's not obvious. There's the home economists or food stylists build the pizza, they bake it, they move the pepperonis around so they're in the right spots and glue things down and make sure it all looks perfect, and then they give it to me. And
then you destroy it.
Completely mess it up. And actually, I've been on the phone for hours with the team there, explaining to them how to
do it,
how to set everything up, and it's so many steps that I just had forgotten because I don't even think about them anymore. It's just things that I do, but there are 100 steps. And my director, my tabletop director, who's a world famous food director, is sort of known for doing these bubbling pizzas that just sit there and bubble, like as if they're, because when they're in the oven, if you ever look at a pizza in an industrial pizza oven, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like a lava,
Yeah.
But he wanted that to happen outside the oven because you can't shoot it in the oven. You can't see it. You can't light it. So we came up with a system to make that happen just on a tabletop. And I don't think I can tell you what it is. I think it's proprietary. But
yeah, I wouldn't. But I think that I will never see a pizza commercial again the same way, ever. I will never be able to look at a pizza the same way.
I should have sent you a link. If I can find a link of a bubbling pizza just
Please
sitting.
do. I'll make Nate cut it into this interview. That'd be rad, for sure. So tell us, let's backtrack then. First of all, do you have any epic stories from the Apostle? How was that working on that? And then enlighten me, what was your actual first job and how did you actually first go into film?
Well, my father, who our little part of Louisiana is in the center of mostly, there's some farming, some sugarcane and soybean farming, or back then at least mostly. And then most of the people he grew up with and went to school with were trappers, crawfishermen, other fishermen. And it's very rural. And the Cajun people, they grew up speaking French, most of them. And it's a very closed, they refer to the rest of the country as the Americans, they're like their own little place. So when Cajun started to get popular, they're not an easy people to approach. They're naturally wary of outsiders. So my dad, although he did some crawfishing and things, he was really a photographer and an English teacher. So he became known as a good liaison because all the local people trusted him. So when a film came through, he would say, guys, these people are going to rent your boats. They're going to want to shoot your locations. They're going to want to, maybe shoot you.
He was like a film commissioner. He was like my job.
And he actually did know the film commissioner at the time because they went to school together at LSU somewhere. So he would send them to my dad. And
nice.
Oh, I was actually in a Chevy truck commercial when they changed the body style in the, I don't know, late 70s. I was sitting on the front of a boat as a Chevy truck was pulling the boat out of the water, holding up a string of fish, and it went national. I made thousands of dollars. I bought my first car.
That's great.
But then, so I started meeting these people, and the epic job I was going to tell you about that led to the Apostle was in probably 84 or so. Miller had this brilliant idea to shoot Cajuns at it was like a boucherie, which is like a party. They bake a pig, they cook a lot of crawfish, boil a lot of crawfish, and drink a lot of beer. And Anheuser-Busch was like, oh, we'll do this Miller commercial. They sent 52 cases of Miller High Life and told the people they could just drink it.
Oh, wow.
It was like, I don't know how they got insurance.
Commercial.
I don't know how they got away with it.
Yeah.
The worst ever. I think they started at like 11, and by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, nobody would listen to anything.
No.
Everybody it was a real party for them. Like, they know how to party.
Yeah.
These people, they know how to party. They drank all the beer. I never ended up seeing the spot, but
I wonder why.
It might not have made it to air. It might have been just the worst mistake they ever made.
Yeah.
But I did become friends with the designer who ended up being the designer of the Apostle, and she was the one who contacted me to be a set dresser on it. And as far as the filming, it was, I wasn't on set much because being a set dresser, I would go in ahead to locations. There were some church revival tent things that we would do chairs and stages and do artwork and all that stuff. There were some radio stations. There were some house locations. So we would, I would go ahead of the shooting crew, as the set dressing team generally does, and then not be there for the shoot because there was an on-set dresser who was there who was more experienced. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
And there was some hanging of artwork, but there was also some, we had a beautiful tour bus, which was an old an old school bus that we got to decorate. That was really fun. And churches, we had organs, old Hammond organs we had to move around and set up. And it was just amazing to see, like, this is what happens for a film. Like, most people wouldn't even think that you go in ahead of time, and
Right.
so much work, so many layers, especially if you go into an empty space, to be able to think about how things accumulate over time.
Right.
A base layer. So you set up a base layer, and then you set up the next layer of things that would have accumulated, and then the next layer, and then the next layer. And it's pretty amazing to think about all that just being created for sometimes a 5-second shot, and then you go take it all down. That's pretty great.
I think that's a good point you made too, and that's true. A lot of the art department is always one shot ahead of the regular production. So the regular production's filming somewhere else, and you've got the art department in the next place setting that up, getting ready, when it comes to film or like episodic television, if you're not in a studio. And so, like you said, you wouldn't necessarily be on set. You'd be one scene ahead or whatever. Get set decorating the next place, or putting props together for the next place, or rigging. And then, like you said, the layers. I mean, even as you were saying that, I was picturing behind you. You've got all the things you would have put away in your shop there, and then you got the things on the counter that maybe you didn't put away. And that, like you said, that the layers of life and how it happens naturally. And I think a lot of people take that for granted when they're watching some type of film or TV show, or even, the commercials you were talking about, that somehow, you walk into a house and you're going to film there, and all those things were just there that way. And that's not true. Someone had to put all that stuff, and not only put it there, but they put it there on purpose to tell a story. And so it's not just to fill a void. You guys are filling a void, but telling a story while you're doing that. You're creating a world with these items of who that person is and what their life maybe have been like. And, that whole story that we in a flash in 3 seconds take in and don't even realize how much it tells us, and subconsciously what we're getting about the person or the storyline or any of that. But it really fills us, with information without us even being aware of that.
Yeah. And I've often thought that a lot of times it's wasted on most of the people, but because they don't notice the level of detail. But that's not that as much as you would notice the lack of the level of detail.
You would.
It wasn't all of that stuff that you see everywhere you look when you walk around your house or a business or whatever.
Right.
It's all there, all this stuff that we accumulate. And that's a thing that I learned on that movie. Speaking of stuff, growing up on a farm, I had been taught by my grandfather and my father and my uncle how to fix things. And I think that's probably, ultimately what led me into this area, is learning the value of things, and back then it's like on the farm, before there was Amazon and we didn't have a Home Depot or a McMaster car or any of these superstores that can have a part for everything that'll get it to you the next day. Things had to be manufactured to repair. I learned how to fix the baler with some piece of wire, or what happens if the belt breaks. I think these things had to be solved on the fly, and that's a lot of what set dressing is. And when I first started working with the lead man, who was from Texas, we were in the truck driving along, and he stops and whips the truck over to the side of the road. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, did you see that dumpster? I was like, no, what? He said, there were some picture frames, there was a chair. We need all that stuff, because it was kind of a low budget film, and there's never enough stuff. So you always need stuff. So we pulled over, went to the dumpster, and sure enough, found all this great stuff and picture frames and like some kind of bamboo screen or something that we worked into sets later on in the movie. And I realized that, and I've never been somebody who likes to throw things away when they can be fixed. And that's one of the things that that I really appreciate about that part of the business and about living here too, is you see so many old, I was thrilled when I got here and had an empty shop and needed a drill press and a bandsaw and a chop saw. The Facebook groups, the Anglin secondhand on 101 there, amazing, just the best. The junk in there that was somebody's grandfather's, or wasn't being used anymore, and you just don't throw stuff away here.
Right.
And takes on a new life, and I love that. I love to fix things. Actually, some of this junk back here, there was a neighbor of ours buys the contents of storage units, and if it's not stuff that they can sell, they don't know what's in it, so they paid $1,000 and ended up getting a storage container full of books. And it's like, these days are like, what do you do with them? Nothing. Yeah. Throw them away. You put them. So they started putting them out on the street, and Lori uses them to decorate, like that little run of books back behind you there, right of the frame. Yeah, it's nice, but the palette, it's not as if it was going to be like something that a decorator would approach, and it wasn't a film commissioner's office. You might want a softer palette, some whites, some light greens, some light blues. So she started going through these books and found that there were some beautiful old books. So I had to load up the trunk of the car, bring the books home, go back, load up the trunk, bring it. So we saved a bunch of books. But then as we were looking in there, they put out a box with a bunch of these old giant light bulbs. And it's like, they're so beautiful. There's one here. It's like, what do you do with them? You can't.
That's cool.
I made a little lamp.
Whoa.
It's not a great lamp. Is that too bright?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, that's cool. No, but yeah, I hear you when you say that. What's interesting about that you made the lamp too, because we interviewed John McLeod, who is special effects specialist, and he was talking about, when we said, what do you need to do to go into the job? He talked about being a machinist or knowing how to fix things or being mechanical. So it makes sense that was your background before you went into doing rigging and doing rigging of the props and being prop master. It completely makes sense. What would you recommend for somebody who wants to pursue a path in props, or rigging or the combination of those things? What would you recommend that people do? What type of training or aptitude should they have in order to go into this profession?
I think it's, I don't know. I've been asked that so many times, and I don't have there's not a real solid answer. If your the schools even have machine shops anymore? Probably not. Like the insurance requirements are probably, like, that's such a, it's a shame that hands-on learning of how to build things, fix things has gotten harder to find. Trade school, I don't know, like, that was just part of my upbringing. You had to know how to build things, fix things, modify things to do something that it wasn't necessarily designed to do. A lot of it, I think, is paying attention, just paying attention to what people do with their hands, because it's so hard to learn things from books sometimes, with that, to translate them to doing things with your hands and being able to envision a task and how to get from the beginning part where you have a box of parts or whatever to the end part where there's something that you can look at and see and feel. It's a tough thing to learn, but I really learned a lot PAing, just watching. And I know it's hard. It's a tough position. I was very frustrated as a PA because on union jobs, you can't go and touch the light. You can't touch the C stand. You can't even move sandbags. You can't plug the whatever in, you know, somebody always has to do it, which was nice about a low budget film or a non-union film is I got a lot of experience. I got to be able to do a little bit of lighting and on my early commercials too. But that's it, just being there and being willing to pitch in whenever you're asked, and when you're not asked to do anything, just watch what people are doing, you know, because it's a tricky area. Film sets can be a little stressful because you know, obviously there's the time factor. So much needs to get done. There's never enough time. And that's why I was frustrated, because I was like, I can help with this. I was brought up wanting to help. I was taught to help. I was taught to jump in, to be a go-getter, to help somebody if they were doing something alone. And it's, and that's a tough part of it. But, and that's one of the reasons I was really looking forward to these films that are hopefully coming back. Cause I love—
I'll tell you offline. I'll tell you offline who's coming.
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
Because it's nice when there is a smaller crew and people depend on each other, and it's nice for people to realize that you're an asset and that you're willing to help, and and when you're not helping, you're cleaning up and throwing stuff away, and, you know, making your environment a nicer place. And I
like what you said about watching, and I think this is the first time this has actually come up in any of these interviews. As somebody who's new to film, I absolutely agree with you. I think people who want to first work in film get so starstruck and excited. You know, they either fall into it and don't realize, oh my gosh, all of a sudden they're working for film, or if they wanted to work for it, they're super excited. You know, they're maybe a little nervous, like I was. And when I first got into film 20 years ago, it was as an extra. You know, for soap operas, and I was in Hollywood, and I was down there, and I quickly realized the green room, I can't even remember what the holding room for the extras was like. I just remember there was a whole bunch of food tables and a whole bunch of people yapping, talking about how great they were and that they had been an extra in this and an extra in that. And I asked the stage manager, you know, for because at that point they were calling those guys stage managers for the on-set, was I allowed to stand by the set and watch and not be in that room? And he said, absolutely. He goes, I prefer it. He goes, I encourage people, extras, to do that, but they always want to be in that room eating and talking instead of being quiet, standing on set. And I said, okay, well, I'll do it. And so I stood there next to him, and he had his little podium and his little book, and he was running, you know, everything. And I stood and watched who was who did what they yelled out. What did that mean? What came flying in when they yelled that word out? What was that actually called? And it was interesting. I just stood there and took it in and watched. That was my film school for me. And I continued to do that. Even if as I moved up the rank, I would watch and see how everybody did things. And I'm not a quiet person, but I was quiet then and really paid attention to what was going on. And I think that was one of the best ways you can learn. If you are not hands-on learning, like you said, doing the job and then helping, you know, on the smaller productions, when you are on something where you are just to stand there, take an opportunity and watch and learn, because it was one of the best ways for me to get my schooling. I read, I interviewed people, I paid someone to let me interview them on how to do some of the jobs and different things. But that was actually my best schooling, was just to stand there, be quiet and watch everyone do their job and learn the vocabulary and learn the set etiquette and learn how people cooperated and worked together. And so I really appreciate that you brought that up as an example of part of how you get into the industry, you know, because it's really a good quality to have.
And maybe, you know, it didn't occur to me because it wasn't really an option when I was a PA, but a real trap these days, I think, it's the cell phones. Like, it's so easy, and we're all so trained to not stand there bored for more than 3 seconds before you're like, wonder what's on Facebook, or, you know,
right.
The kids don't use the Facebooks anymore, but
Instagram and Twitter, yeah.
So it's so no one's encouraging standing there being bored and just observing, you know, and it's
right.
It's so right. It's such a valuable asset to be able to have that, to be able to watch behind the scenes, because it is a crazy, intricate dance. It's cuckoo. Like, who invented that? It's
It is
insane.
amazing how, you'll see the different departments come and go, and you're wondering, how did these 50, 60, 80, 100, 350 people, I had a crew of 350 people, how do they not run into each other or fight more? Or, it is utterly amazing. So let me ask you this. What do you love about your job? Why did you stay in it? What do you love about it? What keeps you going?
Um, I, I have a bit of ADD, so it's hard for me I wouldn't do well at an office job. I don't do well at a desk. I get distracted. I can't. I had to be doing stuff with my hands, and preferably something different, at least every week, if not every day. I love problem solving, and it's a lot of fun to make things do stuff that it wasn't designed to do, or to make something work better than it was intended to work. We use a lot of air cylinders in special effects rigging that are, it's basically a tiny little pneumatic cylinder that goes in and out. That's what it does. It goes in and out. But if you hit it with enough air, it'll launch a shrimp or, flip a pan. It's like crazy fun physics. I love physics, in high school. I actually wasn't a great student. And I sort of failed one of my higher math classes. So I had to make it. I didn't do great. I had to do class. And as a result, all of my friends from that class that went on to take physics the next year, I couldn't take physics the next year, but I ended up having a free period then. And I used to go sit in on the physics classes just to see what kind of crazy stuff they were talking about. Because that's basically what it is. As a set dresser and prop, we joke that mainly what we do is stick things to other things. Because a lot of times it's a lot of tape and hanging and putting
Right.
things in a place. But in special effects rigging, you're doing physics all the time, whether it's a beer pour, what the shape of a container needs to look like to make the actual liquid into a wider shape rather than a narrower shape, how to introduce foam into a beer pour so it doesn't look like just the liquid, because then it looks like pee. You need some bubbles riding along with and
Love it.
it's interesting, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like being paid handsomely to just screw around.
That's what I've been saying.
I love it. I have so many projects here because we moved to Eureka a year ago. Like exactly a year ago, we drove from New Jersey and got here the first week of July. So we've been in our house for a year, and there was so much to do. So it's actually this pandemic has been a little bit of a blessing as well as a curse, because we've gotten to really sort of be able to set the house and the shop up the way we would want to, because I usually don't have a lot of time for that. But
Right.
But tinkering, I love to tinker. I love to pick stuff off the street and fix it, and we donate it, or like just saving things.
I got a few things you could fix. I'll talk to your wife. I'll talk to Lori about this.
Well,
Let me
as soon as I get all this junk out of my truck.
Right? You guys chose to move to Humboldt, and you guys were on the East Coast, and now you're on the West Coast. We met at one of my events, which was awesome. Found out about you guys. I was so excited. And as you said, you're excited to, work in the film industry here on the North Coast. Did you know ahead of time before you came that we had a mini little film industry here, that we were making movies and TV and doing things, or did that just kind of happen afterwards?
That kind of happened afterwards. Most people, when they make life decisions, would look into that kind of thing to see that there was actually some sort of career there for them when they arrived. But
you just threw a dart on the map and then it stuck.
Yeah, we were looking for, an ocean and reasonable taxes and, less snow, less blizzards, because we had a lot of blizzards in New Jersey, less sweltering, triple-digit days, which we had a lot of there in the summer. It's really horrible. New York, New Jersey, it's like you get the worst of the summers and the worst of the winters. I don't know how they manage, but
yeah, so, here it's just nice a lot of the time. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's amazing, and the people are so great. One of my favorite stories for people back east is when I was at the DMV here getting my California driver's license, and the woman at the desk said, "Oh, is this your first California driver's license?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, welcome to California, welcome to Eureka." And I was like, "This is the DMV, right?" Because DMV in New Jersey that I used to go to was a lot like hell, basically.
Yeah.
A lot of forms, a lot of forms. So it was very refreshing. I really appreciate the temperament of the people here.
Oh, good. So as you said, you're excited to work in productions here. And I'm excited, for you to have you guys here. One of the things that I remember early on that you had shared with me was that you worked on SNL.
Yes, SNL is also I can't believe I didn't bring that up because that's one of my favorite projects. I used to prop master it a long time ago because the guy who was prop mastering it before and who's back at the helm now, Rob Ackerman, who's a genius and just an all-around great guy, is also a playwright. And he was writing a play in the late 90s and early 2000s. So they would every week call around for a prop master because it's the film unit only shoots one day a week. They shoot on Friday, and it's the rate.
Explain to us what the film unit is. So there is parts of the show that's live in front of a live audience, right?
Right.
And then you're talking about like sometimes then they'll show all of a sudden we're not looking at it in front of a live audience. They filmed a section
right
ahead of time.
So if it's a fake commercial or a music video, something that happens outside in nature in the woods somewhere, or out on the streets, then typically it's a film unit piece which records ahead of time. So that's the not live part of the show. And back when I started, there was just one film unit. Now there's three, I think, because over the 40 years or however long they've been doing the show, they slowly realized that the film unit pieces were typically better. Probably because they had, we would film a whole day, for a 3-minute skit. So, there was a lot, there were a lot of retakes, and there were the ability to do complicated effects shots, rain and stuff that they couldn't do in the studio. So
right, that makes sense.
A lot of times they're funnier and better. Sometimes not. You win some, you lose some. But that's a really it's not unusual to have to change course all of a sudden because the writers are there and they'll be like, oh, that shot where we were going to do this? Yeah, we want to do this instead. So, let's go make it happen. You got a couple minutes, and we'd have to skirt off and try to find stuff to put together and do. The last time that happened was it was a Mother's Day with Amy. What's her name? The comedian.
Amy Schumer.
Yeah, Amy Schumer was doing a Mother's Day thing where she was celebrating the joys of motherhood, and and she was at the changing table, and it was sort of a low POV. Then they wanted the baby to pee in her face,
No.
And it was like, okay, let's see. We have, a garden sprayer, to pump up kind of garden sprayer. So as they're shooting the scene before that, I run off, take the thing, cut the tip off, try to modify a little piece of tubing that we can run through the bedding and go. And so I'm down underneath with the handle, spray her in the face with it, and it's like, it's all the time that happens.
Is it hard? Was it hard not to laugh? I mean, if you're making those kind of skits, it must have been torture being quiet while you're filming.
It's hard. People ruin takes all the time. Actually,
that's why it takes you a day.
And the best thing about those skits is the behind the scenes stuff that never makes it. They started releasing a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff online but when Adam Driver was on and we did the first, they've done a second one now, but when they did a Star Killer base, Undercover Boss, right? So Adam Driver dresses up as a radar technician and goes into the break room to see what the stormtroopers and everything are saying about him. And it was those days, they can be really long. And I think that one was looking like it was really going to go to 18 hours, which is when they shut it off. Like we've done so many 18-hour days on those. But everybody's super tense. They're trying to be super quiet. You're in a gigantic room with hundreds of people. So everybody's trying not to ruin a take. And they're doing like an interview of Adam Driver. And all of a sudden there's this, and everybody whips around and the AD's ready to like start screaming. And it turns out it was Bobby Moynihan, and they had just put him in his custom stormtrooper outfit that the wardrobe department built overnight, which they're geniuses too. I don't know how they manage some of the stuff they do, but he came squeaking out onto set in his stormtrooper outfit, and everybody lost it. It was
That's awesome.
That's a crazy show. I don't know.
I can imagine. That's pretty epic. So what do you think, local crew, now that you're here in our community and the experiences that you have, what advice do you have for local crew and local vendors, the businesses that you might need to buy props from or buy rigging equipment from, and work with? What advice do you have for them on how to be film friendly, and what do they need to know, in order to like work with, the props department in special effects? What kind of things do the, ways of being, or do they need to know to work in production?
That's kind of a tough one for me to answer because I never actually got the chance once we got here, before everything shut down, to actually experience what it's like. Because before I met you, I didn't realize really there was much of an industry here at all, just because, like I said, we're not good at being adults, so we didn't really research that very, very effectively. But so I look forward to working with these people and figuring out because I will help. I'm not afraid to make suggestions, sometimes to my detriment, but film work is demanding. It's demanding work, and it's like a lot of times vendors get the brunt of a lot of unwanted hassle because things need to happen yesterday. So websites, websites with a lot of pictures where people can research at 1 o'clock in the morning when they just realized that they need to shoot tomorrow something that wasn't scheduled to shoot for 2 weeks. People who are willing to work unreasonable hours, obviously.
That's a theme that has been in everybody's answer is, be available at any second and in the middle of the night. If you want to work in this industry or be part of it, that's a big one.
It's so abusive, and I wish it didn't have to be, but the people.
And it's not constant. It isn't constant, but it is every once in a while. When it is, you have to be ready. Yeah, you have to be.
It's not constant. It's just pervasive.
Yeah, exactly.
This is my repaired coffee cup, by the way. Lori wanted to throw it away, but I couldn't.
Ooh. See, and that's great. That looks great for art department. I think it would be an interesting cup.
Subaru. This is my favorite new product.
What is it called?
Subaru. It's
okay.
It's like a air activated glue. It's a little bit rubbery. It's got a beautiful texture. Very easy to work with. Comes in nice colors.
Oh, I like it. So what are your final thoughts for us? What else do we need to know about you and prop mastering and rigging and all of the good things and
well, aside from, I don't think that my special effects rigging and area of expertise is going to end up being very helpful to anybody here. Although if anybody wants to shoot a food commercial, I'm happy to jump on board. But in general, in general, learning, I think, any area of film, whether it's wardrobe or sound or production or propping and gripping, electric. Most importantly, I think, like we said, is like you said too, is just watching, observing, not interrupting when somebody's working, but making a note. I think a notebook, old school notebook, is an important thing to carry around, to make notes. Like I wonder why that guy changed the diffusion on that lamp, but the other guy put the frame of diffusion up in a C-stand. Like, why didn't he do the same thing? Well, it's because it's two different crafts. So you make a note, like, I'm gonna ask that. And then when somebody has a second, most people I find are pretty happy to tell you about their jobs, to tell you why they do what they do and why they're doing this thing and not the other guy. Ask questions, and offer to help. And if it's not an option for you to help, people will make that pretty clear. But every once in a while, you'll get a chance to, get thrown into a project, and that can lead to a whole career. You got, all of a sudden you're standing there and they need the whole Cheerios, like I was telling you, separated from the broken Cheerios,
right,
or the Oreos or the Doritos or whatever. And it's like, hey kid, come over here. Take these 10 bags of cereal and separate them. Whole Cheerios over here, broken Cheerios over here. And, that could be an entry into propping. You just never know. There's 8 million ways to get sucked into this particular part of the industry. And usually it's being available, being willing to use your brain and think about something, ask questions, be willing to help when help is needed, and just be focused. One more thing and don't make suggestions.
Yeah.
Somebody is a professional and they're talking to the director or the designer. Don't walk up and make a suggestion.
Yeah, worst thing in the world.
But I forgot what I was going to say before that.
You said focus. You did start to talk about focusing, and
yeah,
I
got it. Task. That's funny. Task completion. If you're asked to do something, start the thing and finish the thing. Don't go off and do something else. Don't disappear. Don't go take a phone call or work on your IMDb site, which I haven't done, by the way. I just want to tell you, and Nate did not fix it. So if you look me up, I think I might have 1 or 2 IMDb credits because I never did whole movies. I day played a lot of movies, but
and that means you have to go add yourself, which most people's IMDb's aren't complete. It's not a true resume of what they've actually done. It can sometimes appear a little empty. So I hear you on that. No problems. But I think all the things you just said about, working in the industry and everything, the way you just described a crew member and kind of how you described the set is kind of more like a hospital setting, in the sense of you don't see the doctor and the nurses walking around checking their Facebook or, constantly on their phone or, they focus on their job. They work in their different departments with each other as a collaboration. The janitor doesn't walk up to the doctor and suggest, well, maybe have you thought about doing this to your patient? It's like, it's respecting all of those different procedures of how a hospital works. A film set works very similar in that regard, of it's a group of people who are all coming together, this machine, and
to save lives.
To save lives. Right? So yeah, I think that you're right. All the aspects that you talked about today were great, and there were some new ones in there different from the other interviews, and so I really appreciate that because I think that it's a really good perspective. If someone really wants to go into film, these are really the attributes of what you have to be like and what it's like on set in order for people to want to work with you again. Because if you keep walking up as a young production assistant who walks up and gets into these conversations where you're not supposed to be, or even ask questions, intelligent questions, but at the wrong time, those kind of things, people aren't going to want you on the set again because they're going to be like, oh, that person was nice or great or whatever, but they're not getting it. They're not getting protocol. And we just don't have time for that. So especially
Watch
if you're
and
pulling,
learn.
yeah,
Watch.
watch and learn, watch and learn. Yeah. Well, I am thrilled that you are in our community. I'm so excited to have you and your wife here. I'm glad that you guys aren't adults and that you threw a dart at the map and that it's stuck.
Nope.
And yeah, and I'm really excited. And you know, right before, as you said, the pandemic happened, we had introduced you to a movie. I have more news on that. I'll tell you about offline. But we definitely are hopeful that you guys will be working here when productions come here to film. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Me too.
Yay! Well, thank you
Let's
for
do
the
it.
interview. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, JP. I really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. And I'm so looking forward to working with you guys. I can't believe this happened. Like, what's the timing? What are the chances?
I know. Bizarre.